Welcome back to Storytime Universe, where stories come to life. If you've been following the Artifact's Whisper, you know that Eli Baxter's journey started with a mysterious discovery, an object that defied logic, reshaped reality, and turned his life upside down. But power is a tricky thing. What starts as a gift can become an obsession.
Chapter 5: The Spider's Web. Eli Baxter stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse. The city sprawled beneath him like a shimmering tapestry of neon veins, pulsing with life. It had once swallowed him whole, its towering skyscrapers casting long shadows over his failures. Now it bowed beneath his influence, its rhythms dictated by his unseen hand. The rain-slicked streets reflected the glow of billboards advertising brands he controlled, and beyond them, competitors scrambled in vain to keep up. Every victory tightened his grip. Every loss, someone else's, reinforced his power. The artifact rested in his palm, cool and deceptively still, yet brimming with a silent pulse that resonated deep within him. It was no longer an anomaly, no longer an object to be studied. It was a living extension of himself. With each passing day, the hum in his ears grew stronger, a secret whisper meant only for him. He no longer needed to grasp it tightly to wield its power. A mere thought, a flicker of intent, and the world reshaped itself to his will. It started as small manipulations, barely more than a nudge. A rival shipment was mysteriously delayed, throwing off production schedules and sending investors into a quiet panic. Another's flagship product suffered an inexplicable malfunction. Recalls and lawsuits dragging them down. At first, Eli had barely noticed the thrill. He sipped his morning coffee, read the headlines, and let a slow smile spread across his face. The world was playing into his hands, but power, once tasted, demanded more. He no longer waited for opportunities. He created them. Real estate deals tipped in his favor as zoning laws subtly shifted. Entire business ventures collapsed overnight, their supply chains inexplicably failing just as Eli moved to claim their market share. Tech startups that once threatened his dominance were suddenly crippled by software failures, their code irreparably corrupted. He didn't need to ask how it worked. The artifact knew what he wanted before he even had to say it. And yet, the more power he wielded, the more alone he felt. The celebrations had long since lost their appeal. The people who surrounded him weren't friends, just placeholders, sycophants who spoke in rehearsed admiration, afraid of falling from his favor. He couldn't remember the last time he had laughed without calculation. His phone vibrated, the screen flashing a name he hadn't seen in weeks. Mason. Eli let the call ring for a moment before answering.
Mason, what a surprise.
We need to talk, in person.
There was something in his old friend's voice. Urgency, weariness, maybe even fear. Against his better judgment, Eli agreed. They met at a quiet cafe, the kind of place they had once frequented back when Eli's aspirations had been mere daydreams. The warm scent of roasted coffee clashed with the unease settling in Eli's gut. Mason looked up as he approached, his eyes searching.
Eli, what the hell is happening to you?
Eli sat down, smirking.
That's a hell of a way to start a conversation.
I'm not joking.
Mason said, his voice low.
You've changed. And I don't mean the money, the influence. I mean the way things move around you. Things go wrong for your competitors at the exact moment you need them to. Deals fall apart, businesses collapse, people suddenly shift in your favor.
Eli leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly.
I'm just good at what I do, Mason. I see opportunities where others don't.
Mason shook his head.
This isn't strategy, it's something else.
He hesitated.
Lena's been watching too. She's noticed patterns. She thinks you've found something.
A flicker of irritation sparked in Eli's chest. Lena. She had always been the moral compass, the one who insisted that hard work and integrity mattered. He hadn't spoken to her in weeks, not because he didn't want to, but because deep down, he knew she wouldn't approve of what he had become.
She thinks I have an edge, huh?
Eli said, his tone cooling.
And you believe her?
Mason hesitated before answering.
I believe that power like this doesn't come without consequences.
A strange silence settled between them. Outside, the city continued as it always had. Cars rolling through rain-soaked streets, strangers moving through their daily lives. But for the first time in a long while, Eli felt something unfamiliar press against his ribs. Doubt. Mason stood, sliding his chair back with slow deliberation.
I don't know what you're doing, Eli, but I know it's dangerous. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it's going to catch up to you.
Eli watched his old friend leave, the cafe's door swinging shut behind him. The hum of the artifact was a steady presence now, like a heartbeat syncing with his own. It whispered reassurances, wrapping around his thoughts like silk. Mason was wrong. There was no danger, only evolution. Back in his penthouse, Eli placed the artifact on his desk, watching the way the city lights reflected in its shifting patterns. With a slow breath, he let his mind drift, not toward destruction, but toward absolute control. Tonight, a competitor's data servers would mysteriously fail. A rival's headquarters would suffer an unfortunate flood due to a broken pipeline. The web tightened and the spider smiled. Chapter 6, Deception and Control. The city stretched beneath Eli like a living organism, a glittering expanse of steel and neon that pulsed with energy, oblivious to the man who held its fate in his hands. From the window of his high-rise office, he watched it all. Cars moving like blood through veins, people flowing through streets like cells in a body, unaware that every beat of their existence was now subject to his influence. He had mastered the rhythm of power, learned how to manipulate the currents of fate, and with the artifact pulsing steadily in his palm, he no longer had to wait for opportunities. He created them. He had started small, shifting the tides in his favor, a contract falling through for a rival, a competitor's production line mysteriously stalling. But it wasn't enough. Power demanded expansion. His devices, born from the artifact's energy, were masterpieces of precision, surveillance tools that made secrets obsolete, fail-safes that dictated success or failure at his whim. He saw them as safeguards and not weapons, until they became exactly that. A vibration against his palm, his phone. He hesitated, then answered.
Eli, oh God, there's a problem.
The voice on the other end was frantic, shaking, and the weight in Eli's stomach dropped like a stone.
The system, it glitched. It locked them in. They couldn't get out, Eli. The fire, Jesus, the fire. People were screaming, pounding on the doors, but they
A ragged breath, then a choked sob.
didn't make it.
Eli's grip on the artifact tightened until his knuckles burned. Number that wasn't supposed to happen. He had designed the failsafe to force compliance, not death. This was a mistake, a miscalculation. It had to be. His voice, when it came, felt distant.
Casualties?
3 dead, more injured. It's all over the news.
He turned on his massive screen. The image flickered to life, and the world shattered. The bank's upper floors were blackened husks, thick smoke curling into the sky. Sirens flashed in frantic reds and blues. Newscasters speculated, mechanical failure, a tragic accident. But Eli knew better. He had done this. The weight in his chest pressed harder, a suffocating mass of something he refused to name. He could hear the echoes of it, the desperate pounding against locked doors, the raw terror in the screams that had faded to silence. His breath came shallow, too sharp. His thoughts raced, searching for a way to rewrite reality, to erase the truth. No, this was just a mistake, a misstep, an anomaly. He exhaled, slow and controlled, shoving the thought into the depths of his mind where it couldn't touch him. The world was built on sacrifice. Progress demanded a price. He had always known that. The artifact glowed, steady, unwavering. It did not judge. It did not hesitate.
I will be more careful next time.
Eli said to himself. And yet, as the silence pressed against him, as the city below flickered like a dying ember, something felt different. The artifact's hum had always reassured him, whispered to him like a promise. Tonight, it felt like a warning.
And that's it for this part of the Artifact's Whisper. But trust me, Eli's journey is far from over. If you're enjoying the story, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter. And let me know in the comments, what do you think will happen next? Thanks for being part of Storytime Universe, where stories take on a life of their own. Until next time, keep imagining, keep wondering, and I'll see you in the next story.